Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode here of the Dr. Quack Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Quack.
And I'm the important one, Mr. Mayhem, and today is a great day. We got rid of the hardcore garbage that is XPW, is ECW, and we're doing a really good show here. AWA Super Sunday.
That's right. AWA Super Sunday. This took place in April of 1983. And there's a big saying that always goes with this. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This show had so much significance with it. I mean, you talk about, what came during that time frame. You had, the Von Erichs out there in world class.
Right.
You had Bob Backlund running the WWF as champion. You had Jerry Lawler with his promotion. You had a lot of things going on. 83, even according to Jim Cornette, would be the most significant year in all of wrestling because it was before all the boom.
That's right. We've talked about significant events in wrestling history before. The pay-per-view right before the advent of the New World Order and the Austin 316 era in 1996. We've reviewed right before that. We've reviewed basically the death of WCW, which started with Bash at the Beach 2000. We've reviewed good pay-per-views of WrestleMania from the start of it. This one is more historically significant in the grand scheme of things than most people realize. And as we get to that, we're going to discuss a little bit about that and why it's so historically significant. But let's go ahead and get us started.
Yeah. It's wild. I got to mention this first. 17 people on this card after this show went to the WWE one point or another.
Right.
This show here has such significance. This took place on April 24th, 1983 at the St. Paul Civic Center in St. Paul's, Minnesota.
And this is first historical event number one. They mentioned this, so we looked it up. The next day, Jerry the King Lawler goes on the David Letterman show and slaps Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, that has major significant value. I mean, there's just so much stuff in this show. Rod Trongard.
There you go.
Always a wild name to say. Trongard there on commentary. I thought he did an okay job.
Yeah, like I said, when you brought it up, I'm not a great fan of his voice. I just don't like the sound of it. But the words he says are very good. He's a good ring announcer, good play-by-play guy. Keeping people involved, reminding them what's going on, reminding them what they're there for, keeping people going on with the ins and outs. So he did a good job.
That's right. By the way, today is my birthday, and people ask, what did we do on our birthday? We went and viewed this pay-per-view, and now we're reviewing it for you.
That's right. And another guy that comes up on the list, he's number one on the count so far. Mean Gene Okerlund is the ring announcer for this show.
Yes, Mean Gene. And I loved him as a backstage man for the F and the WCW. But when here, it didn't seem right.
He was not really a good ring announcer. He had a natural pause for some reason because he did it with everybody. He wasn't reading from notes, but he would announce from wing. So he had a natural pause in there that was kind of distracting. He didn't have that when he did backstage work, but as a ring announcer, he was okay.
Yeah, I mean, nothing spectacular, but, it built better throughout the years. Referees on the card, Bob Warren, Steve Osolowski, and Larry Luzowski.
Yeah, the second guy. The only reason we brought that up specifically is to mention the third referee, Larry Luzowski. His father was Crusher Luzowski, who was a former AWA World Champion. So his son entered the business as well as a referee. He did 2 matches. He did the main event, and he did one other match. And all the referees here did a good job. We had a special guest one as well. One of the things I like these referees did is they sold what was going on. They told you the action. Like when there was a strike, the referee showed the tap so that everybody could see it. One of the jobs, if you look at a referee in every single other sport, baseball, they call the balls and strikes. Basketball, they count the points. Football, they count the blocks or they count the bad calls. Referees need to start doing that again because there is some action the crowd can't see, and the referee should let people know what's going on. So I really enjoyed watching the old way the referees used to do things.
Yes, they did a really solid job. I mean, if you watch them in comparison to the NWA referees, it was great in that time frame. First match here, Brad Rankins taking on Rocky Stone.
That's right. Brad Rankins was a former Greco-Roman wrestler. He wrestled on the Olympic team. He won gold medals in the Pan American Games. So he's a very respected and decorated Greco-Roman wrestler. Taking on Rocky Stone. Tom Stone was kind of a jobber that traveled the circuit all throughout his time, 70s, 80s, even in the early 90s. He's not on our list, but he did do a few jobs for the WWF. When we talk about 17 people that made their way with significance. We want to caveat that. The match was really strange from the standpoint of they spent a lot of time on the ring apron. They didn't go outside the ring, they were on the ring apron. But the selling was so much better in this day. One headshot into the turnbuckles, and he sold it for about 30 seconds, but didn't oversell it. He sold it appropriately. Very simple storytelling. The only thing I really had besides this is Rod Trongard from the old days, same as Gordon Soley, used to call it a suplex. Most everybody else calls it a suplex. The reason it's called suplex is the first person to use it came from Mexico, and X's in Mexico are pronounced as an H, so that's where the suplex came in. I prefer the sound suplex. I think it sounds more impactful. But Brad Rankins went over with his gut-wrench suplex for a 2.5-star match.
Definitely. I gave it 2 stars. I liked it. It was simple wrestling. For the time frame, it fit perfectly in there. The fans were very excited, by the way.
Yeah.
It was nice to see a packed house with people excited about professional wrestling and watching it where people did not take super bumps or super spots.
That's right. There was only, from what I can think of, Brad Rankins took 2 bumps. One where he took a shot trying to do a leapfrog, took a bump, and then one or two drop kicks. Tom Stone only took about 2 or 3 bumps himself. You don't need to have 55 bumps, 60 bumps in a match. 2 or 3 and tell the story, and you get along just fine. You get longer careers the less times you tick your bump card. And the only thing I didn't like about this show was after every match, Mean Gene went in and interviewed somebody. Usually it was the winner, but interviewed somebody. I felt it was a little distracting, and it hurt the flow a little bit, but that didn't go into my rating of a 2.5-star match on this one.
Exactly. Moving along here, Buck Zumhold taking on Steve Regal.
Rock and roll Buck Zuma.
Zuma, there you go, sorry. Some of these names I barely remember.
Against Steve Regal. Steve Regal and Stan Lane were the fabulous ones. Steve Regal also teamed with Jim Brunzell and took the AWA titles off the Road Warriors, the tag team titles.
Yeah, and not to confuse you, not with Steven Regal over in WCW. Totally different guy.
Correct. And Rock and Roll Buck Zumoff, while he was a popular guy, today he is a boil on the ass of wrestling. We're not going to bring up what he's done. All I'm going to tell you is he's in jail, and he deserves to be in jail. If you choose to look him up, you can do that on your own. It involves children, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, the match itself, in my opinion, was very solid. I think this helped with the progression of the show. I gave this match 2.5 stars. I felt like they worked the crowd well. They even had a couple nice, simple spots that could be used today.
That's right. Man, I guess I like AWA a whole lot more than you did. This is the second match in a row. I gave it a higher ranking. I went 2 3/4. They had a nice spot in here. Buck Zumoff for the 80s did a really nice high spot where he got a feet flip instead of landing on his back. He did a full flip, landed on his feet, turned right around and landed a drop kick. It was a really nice high spot. He ended with what's now known as the Vader Bomb. So Buck Zumhofe did go over. I gave it 2 3/4. Again, the crowd loved this match.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought it was, a good solid match, a great finish. I loved it, I went on with it. But now let's move on here. And I'm going to actually tell you, Jerry Lawler against John Tolos.
Yep, the Golden Greek John Tolos. They called him Tolos in this. Everybody else has always called him Tolos or Tolos. So that's what we're going to call him. So right now our count is up to 3. Because the Golden Greek John Tolos came on for a while as Kurt Hennig's manager as the coach.
Yes.
And Jerry Lawler needs no other explanation. So this is where they brought up the next day that Jerry Lawler was going on to the David Letterman show for his second appearance. And this is where we looked it up and found this was the Andy Kaufman angle. So the match was good. Again, good selling. Jerry Lawler did a really nice uppercut punch where he went over the top rope. This is back when making somebody go over the top rope by your own hand was a disqualification, but momentum did not. So it was really confusing. It was something that it was for plot purposes, basically.
I think somebody messed up a spot there because, he went over the top. That should have been a DQ according to their rules, but it wasn't.
Right, because they came out and said later that it was the momentum thing. So that's why I said I'm glad the going over the top rope thing has become passé and gone away. They always made it too confusing, and they never enforced it properly to make it mean something. So when it happened in a match, it looked screwy. This match wasn't as good, though. John Tolos was kind of getting on in years. I did go 2.5 on this one. It was decent.
I went 2 3/4.
Okay. Lawler won with the pile driver. Go ahead.
That exactly right there. In the 80s, the pile driver was banned. They were trying to ban it completely. They were still allowing it in the AWA at this point. Nobody gave a better pile driver than Jerry Lawler in those days.
Well, the late Paul Orndorff could probably give him a run for his money.
He could, but I mean, he did that later. I'm talking when he was in like the F. Lawler would do it towards the late 70s.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying. At that point, now when they put them together,
I pretty much nobody but Lawler was using it. So
right.
Lawler and Harley Race.
Yeah. And both of them definitely had a great pile driver. I loved it. That's why I went with 2 3/4.
And that's a good fair point. I can agree with that. I'm still going to stay with 2.5. I didn't think the whole match could be moved up based upon the one move, but it was a good match.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to move on here to my Quack Attack. Because this match here, in my opinion, was one of the best matches on the card. It was not the top bill. But this match here, the Texas Cowgirls, Wendy Richter and Joyce Grable took on Judy Martin and Velvet McIntyre for the NWA Women's Tag Team titles. You didn't get to see a lot of women's wrestling back in that day.
No, you didn't. And this was a great match. I fully support and agree with the Quack Attack that it was appropriate. Wendy Richter and Joyce Grable, confusing at first because both the women kind of played heel in the beginning, but when you follow the progression of the story, Wendy Richter and Joyce Grable were definitely the heels coming into this match. Judy Martin, this was 83. By the time she made it to the WWF in 85, she had started to get a lot older, was starting to pack on the pounds. And that's not to be mean, it's just there's a significant different looking Judy Martin from 83 versus 85.
Big difference, yes.
Velvet McIntyre didn't look horrible in this match. We've seen other matches with her that got sprayed or got fingered. So, yeah, she did a good job on this one. I went 3 stars on this one. The match was solid. Referee Bob Warren proved referees are tough. When Judy Martin lands on the ref and he doesn't stop counting because the shoulders were still down. That's a tough referee. So I like that. They had some good cornball spots, but these women were wrestlers. They were not divas. They were wrestlers, and they deserved the respect of being called ladies. Great job, great wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, I loved this match. I felt like it had everything with it. It had your viciousness. Back in the AWA where the men were men and the women fought like men too, because they actually did. They looked like fighters. They looked like they came out there and really hit you like you're supposed to. Not this air punch crap.
and they were bumping properly.
Yes, they looked good. They had a little silly spot in there, but overall, I gave this match 3.25 stars. I felt like it was just one of the best matches that actually kept me entertained throughout this.
That's right. And Wendy Richter got the pin to retain. So the Texas Cowgirls continued on being the NWA Women's Tag Champs.
Yeah, and there's 3 more to add to that WWF list we've mentioned. So now moving on, number 5 here. Wahoo McDaniels taking on Eddie Boulder. Dizzy Eddie Boulder.
I hate to do this because I couldn't think of something to spray, so I'm going to spray the future.
Okay.
For those of you who were not familiar with Dizzy Eddie Boulder, that's Brutus Beefcake. Dizzy Eddie Boulder had long blonde hair. He was cut. He looked in shape. He looked athletic. His moves actually were not horrible. He comes to the WWF, gets punched in the head, and loses his damn mind. So I'm going to not spray Dizzy Eddie Boulder, but I'm going to spray Brutus Beefcake, just because I don't like Brutus Beefcake and should have never been involved in wrestling. Since that was the only bad thing on this show.
Yeah, there really was not a lot of bad stuff here. This match, it was about a 2.5 for me. It was past the course. Yeah. Wahoo, being Wahoo with the chop, dropping the elbow, getting the victory here.
That's right. It was a little bit sloppy. Wahoo was known to be a little bit sloppy. He had a toughness and a credibility about him that he didn't care that his stuff looked sloppy. He said, fights aren't pretty, so the match shouldn't look pretty, and I kind of agree with that statement. Lawler came out on commentary. They did have some microphone problems, but Rod Trongard and Jerry Lawler did carry on some commentary that I enjoyed. Yeah. I only went 2.25. Again, Wahoo went over with the elbow. It was a decent match. Boulder was only a couple of years in the business at this point, so all in all, it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a passable match. It moved on to the 6-man tag here. We had Jesse Ventura, Ken Patera, and Blackjack Lanza with Bobby Heenan in the corner. No brain yet.
Bobby was the brain.
Oh, he was the brain? Did they call him? Yeah, it was real.
Yeah, because he got mad at Gene Okerlund because he wouldn't cut, because he started to say weasel and he stopped him and said brain.
That's right. You are correct. Yeah, they are taking on Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, and Rick Martel in a 6-man tag here. I enjoyed this match. I felt like it was really good. The best part of this match was the finish. I loved the concealment. I loved Ken Patera getting the weapon from Bobby Heenan, putting it in his trunks, taking a little bit of a butt whooping, getting ready to get a figure 4 slapped on him, and bam! Nobody really saw it coming. If you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have seen it.
That's right. And they didn't call it the figure 4 in the AWA. It was called the Indian Deathlock.
Yes.
But Ventura's awful, but what he added to this match was okay. Patera was great. Lanza was great. I hate the Texas Brainbuster, a.k.a. the Atomic Noogie. I've never been a fan of that. I think it's stupid. Yes, it probably really hurts. Put a noogie in your temple, it probably really hurts. It still looks stupid.
It does.
And we had Jumping Jim Brunzell, who was a killer bee. Rick Martel, this is pre-AWA World Title reign Rick Martel, and pre-The Model Rick Martel. He was still looking good at this time. He still looked great. And then the only guy who didn't look like a wrestler, Greg Gagne. Now, Greg Gagne is a brilliant mind in the wrestling business. He has been working in the office of the WWF/WWE for about 25 years.
Yeah. Imagine having your father sell his company to the other guy, and you go work for him. How does that make you feel?
Well, in Vern and Greg Gagne's case, it worked out very well.
It did.
Vern Gagne was taken care of for life, even up until the day he died. And Greg Gagne has been involved in many important decisions in the WWF/WWE. So all in all, it did work out for the Gagne family.
Yeah, I gave this match 3 stars. Just because of the aftermath, the fighting afterwards. Of course, Heenan getting a little bit of an ass kicking there.
I went 2 3/4, and then the fight at the end made the extra quarter star go all the way up. So I'm with you. I went 3 stars. This match was a lot of fun. There was a lot going on, but it wasn't overdone. You were able to pay attention to all of the stuff that was going on in there. Something you guys down the road need to think about. You don't have to work fast, and you don't have to throw everything at the wall. You can have everybody in the ring together, and you just do 1 or 2 simple things, and everybody can see what everybody's doing. And the crowd loved it.
Yeah. And I will tell you, this pay-per-view was 2 hours, right? They fit 8 matches in 2 hours. And I was entertained for pretty much those 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's something I'm probably not going to be able to do tonight with Money in the Bank. I can already feel this. But we're not getting into that. Woo. We're talking about the championship match. AWA champion Nick Bockwinkle with Bobby the Brain Heenan taking on Hulk Hogan. The incredible Hulk Hogan.
This is the other event we're talking about of wrestling history. This
Pre-cut t-shirt Hulk Hogan, by the way.
Pre-cut, wearing black with red tights and white boots.
Yeah.
So he wasn't red and yellow yet. He still had almost a full head of hair. So, but to go into the historical significance of this, we'll go over the match and then we'll get into the historical, because I think that makes more sense.
Go ahead.
So, Nick Bockwinkle came in the champion with Bobby the Brain Heenan. They brought out Wally Carbo, who was the head promoter for the AWA. He booked many of the territories that fell under the AWA auspices. They brought out Stanley Blackburn, who was the president and owner of the company that Vern owned. So he was basically a figurehead. But they brought out Nick Bockwinkle and Hulk Hogan with Lord James Blears, who was a wrestler from the 40s, who finally passed away in 2016 at the age of 96 years old. So he looked old in this show. He still lived on for another 30 years. This one had a great rep-up. The match was good storytelling of Bockwinkle didn't want to do the match. Bockwinkle was in it for the money. He didn't care. He wasn't losing. He was doing everything he could to get out of the match. Hogan was doing everything he could to win the title that he felt he deserved because he'd always gotten screwed over. It's a very simple story. It usually works. It worked here almost too well. But anyway, the end. Lord James Blears took not 1, but 2 bumps.
And he did a great job selling. If you're a referee in the independent circuit or even the E, watch that match and learn how to do it.
The first bump, when Hogan pushed off Bockwinkle, Bockwinkle landed on Lord Blears. He didn't die. He didn't lay there like he had been killed. He crawled around after about 4 or 5 seconds, started getting up, made his way to the corner, and stagger sold, which, for those of you that didn't know, this is what a stagger sell is. And then got squashed in the corner, and that's when he was down for about 10 seconds and then started getting up again. Referees, you don't have to get killed to sell injury. Again, as the doctor said, if you are a referee and you want to learn how to do the referee bump sell, watch this match.
Yeah. My favorite part of this match, I went 4 stars on this. I felt like with the significance, the way it worked, this helped build Hulkamania and so forth further down.
Yes, I also gave it 4 stars. By the way, if you heard that, we just had another storm coming through here in Houston. So we're going to try and speed it up a little bit here. We apologize to you. We know we like to give you all the information.
Big line I saw on this show, though, was they raised the ticket prices because Bockwinkle's fee.
I love that. That is great storytelling from Rod Trongard of explaining kind of the history and significance of this, because this is the oldest pay-per-view or oldest closed circuit we have reviewed. Again, April 1983. WrestleMania was in 1985. So, again, going back to the history, Hulk Hogan won this match and then got a reverse decision of what's called a dusty finish. I've explained that before. It's the kayfabe word of the day, the dusty finish. That Stanley Blackburn, as the president, told the referee that Hulk Hogan had thrown Bockwinkle over the top rope. So therefore, Hulk Hogan was disqualified and the pin never happened. because it was an automatic disqualification. The crowd went ballistic.
Oh, yeah.
They threw popcorn. They threw sodas in the crowd. When Hogan's standing there holding the belt, you could see the popcorn in the ring. And not some 5 months later, 6 months later, Hogan leaves the AWA, goes to WWF, and becomes Hulk Hogan, the multiple-time world champion, 2-time Hall of Famer that basically carried wrestling for about 10 years.
Big moving factor here. The year before, 1982, Hulk Hogan was in Rocky III. And they were setting up him and Mr. T at WrestleMania 185. That's a big gap for all that story.
That's right, but it all carried well.
Yes.
And that's what we mean about how historically significant. If they would have put the belt on Hulk Hogan, which Vern Gagne never wanted to do because Hulk Hogan wasn't a Vern Gagne guy, he wanted it, Nick Bockwinkle was trained by Vern Gagne. Vern wanted to put it on his son, and basically the locker room almost revolted. So that's why it ended up on Larry Zbyszko, who was Bockwinkle's son-in-law. So it all kind of worked together to stay within the Gagne family. If Gagne would have put it on Hogan, imagine how much different things would have been. We would have got what we talked about. Dusty Rhodes, a WWF World Champion. It would have been a whole lot different.
Yeah, and now we're going to move on to the main event.
Yeah.
Because this is getting my two-finger salutes! The match was okay. It was not great. It should not have been here after the Bockwinkle-Hogan match. This was crappy booking and crappy nepotism by somebody in charge. Come on, man. Know where your talent is. Know where the money's getting drawn from. I'm sorry, this match here, Vern Gagne, Mad Dog Vachon taking on Sheik Adnan and Al Casey, and Jerry Blackwell in a tag team match. This match should have been either semi-main or middle of the card. I get it, it's the return of Vern Gagne, but your championship match should have been on top.
That's right. And just to explain, the AWA, American Wrestling Association, owned by Vern Gagne, went out of business in 1991. Vern Gagne was his own worst enemy. I hate to say that because I really enjoyed Vern Gagne the wrestler, but Vern Gagne the businessman, while he was a very good booker and promoter, he fell in love with the name Gagne. He would not give up anything. He always kept it close to the chest. Him coming out of retirement, he felt he was the main event because he's the owner of the company. That's why this match was in the main event. We talked about it back and forth, and I said I could see both ways because this was a showpiece match. But you're right. The ending with the way the crowd reacted, that should have been the main event.
Have you ever noticed every time Vince McMahon has stepped in the ring on a major pay-per-view, he has not been the main event, and he has lost.
That's right.
More times than not.
That's right. So, he's right. This match was okay. The only one of these that we can say actually made it into the WWF was Sheik Adnan Al-KC because he was General Adnan with Sergeant Slaughter when he betrayed America and turned Iraqi sympathizer.
And that's in order.
Jerry Blackwell was a great big man, bumping big man, probably one of the best at 460-some pounds. He never got into the WWF, and the reason was he didn't want to wait in line. He'd already stood in line 4 hours to go cut his practice promo. And he was like, screw this, I don't want to punch a time card. So that's why Jerry Blackwell was never in. Mad Dog Vachon was never in, and Vern Gagne is only in by proxy of selling his company. He is a Hall of Famer, but we're not counting Vern Gagne because Vern never did anything except sell. I did give this match 2.5 stars. The referee on this one, Larry Lazowski, he basically let this thing go. Chairs got brought in, the ring bell got used, the mic stand got used, and then Rod Trongard kept talking about, well, it's a good thing to get in and throw him over the top rope, or it would have been a disqualification. It was like...
That's my main beef with this whole match here. It was just, it shouldn't have been on at the main event. That was just horrible booking. The match was okay. It could have been better, but it could have been worse. That's just a problem with it. Notice also, if you watch this pay-per-view, no intro or outro. What did they do after the match?
They went right to the next match, or they would have a quick interview segment with Mean Gene in the ring talking to the champion. But it would be something like, so Brad Rankins, talk about that new move. So Brad Rankins, what's next for you?
And then
We're coming back to the next action on the next match.
That was basically what it was. Sometimes you could understand what they were saying, sometimes you couldn't. But even after the main, that's what they did. They had a quick interview and then they cut off the show.
But I did go 2.5 because Mad Dog put on color.
Mad Dog
Lawler put Jerry Blackwell put on color, and Sheik Adnan, while not putting on color, he had a cast that was broken off of him, and they used that as the finish by dropping a knee on his arm. And you could see that when they were breaking the cast off, he had cuts in his arm. So we had 3 people basically put on some color. WWE, can we please bring back some color?
Please. We missed the blood. We missed the violence.
It doesn't have to be every match. I fully understand. The Cesaro getting spiked in a hard way doesn't count as bringing back blood.
Yeah, we got to bring this along. But that's the end of our show here for this episode. We're going to continue covering some AWA here. This is going to turn into a 3-part series here. Tell them what's next.
So next we've got coming up, this was competing with the WWF. This is Super Clash. This is where the NWA, AWA, USWA, and World Class decided to start working together to put on super shows to fight the WWF in WrestleMania.
That's right. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you can, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Please. We need the viewers, and we'd love to see your thoughts. I'm your host, Dr. Quack.
And I'm the important one, Mr. Mayhem, saying thank you for our journey through the American Wrestling Association, and we'll see you next show.
That's right. Happy birthday to me.